Tonight at 10, we're in Paris, where Emmanuel Macron is on course to be re-elected as France's president. Mr. Macron is projected to defeat his far-right rival Marine Le Pen after a divisive campaign, and he promised tonight to govern for everyone.
Our country harbours many doubts and divisions, so we need to be strong, but nobody will be left behind.
Ms. Le Pen, who improved on her vote from the last election, admitted defeat but vowed to carry on campaigning.
This evening, French people have shown that they want a strong counterweight to Mr. Macron.
Also on tonight's programme, we'll have the very latest on the war in Ukraine. President Zelensky asks his people not to be consumed by anger at Russian atrocities on this Orthodox Easter Sunday. The Conservative Party chairman backs Boris Johnson over Partygate, saying there's a strong case he should stay as Prime Minister. And Tyson Fury hints at retirement after retaining his heavyweight title against Dillian Whyte.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 10, live from Paris, where Emmanuel Macron is on course to be re-elected as the President of France. Speaking in the last hour, Mr. Macron thanked his supporters, but said after recent divisions, he would oversee a new era in France in which no one would be left behind. Earlier, his rival Marine Le Pen conceded defeat, but vowed to continue her political career, hailing the improvement in her vote. Exit polls, which are usually incredibly accurate, suggest that Mr. Macron will win around 58% of the vote, with Ms. Le Pen taking around 42%. We'll look at what the result means for France and for the rest of the world. But first, our Europe editor, Katya Adler, reports on the day's events.
Emmanuel Macron, one of Europe's most powerful leaders, clearly reconfirmed tonight. The first French president to be re-elected in 2 decades. His supporters ecstatic and relieved.
We feel safer for the next 5 years.
Because Marine Le Pen is the worst that we can have. So we are really happy to have Macron again.
I feel relieved. I feel really relieved because it was a really dangerous moment for France and for Europe.
Macron critics label him aloof, elitist. That's not how he came across tonight.
My friends, we will need to be kind and respectful because our country harbours many doubts and divisions. So we will need to be strong, but nobody will be left by the wayside.
For his rival and her crowd, a crushing blow.
Well, right now we're obviously disappointed that she wasn't elected. We have 5 more years with Macron. What state will France end up in? I fear the worst.
The next 5 years will see lots of anti-Macron protests because France is suffering and being ripped apart.
But for many in France, Marine Le Pen remains unelectable, a far-right threat, with a nationalist French vision, in stark contrast to the internationalist Macron. But Marine Le Pen insists she's not giving up. Parliamentary elections are just around the corner here.
It's all left to play for at this stage. We must make sure we retain hope.
An unapologetic speech by Marine Le Pen here. She may have lost tonight, but with her best results ever. She's tried now for the 3rd time to become France's president. And millions upon millions of French men and women went out to vote for her. Watch out, Emmanuel Macron, she says. We will remain in opposition and a force to be reckoned with. It is a problem for France's president. It's a bittersweet victory. He inherits a fragmented, divided country.
Macron with you was a main campaign slogan for France's president. From tomorrow, he'll try to unite his country behind him, his plans for stronger French finances and leadership abroad. Tonight, celebrations spread far beyond Paris. Brussels is beaming as well. Katya Adler, BBC News, Paris.
Well, our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson is at the Macron campaign headquarters. And Lucy, what does his re-election mean for France?
Well, look, he's the first person to win re-election here for 20 years. And when you look at what he's been up against during his mandate, the Yellow Vest protests, the COVID crisis, trying to deal with the war in Ukraine during a campaign, this is an achievement. But no one here has ever lost a presidential race yet to the far right. And so this election was Mr. Macron's to lose. And in some ways, the headline here tonight is that more than 40% of France seems to have voted for a far-right president, seems to have voted for the opposite of what Mr. Macron is offering. So where does he go from here? Well, firstly, he needs to keep his parliamentary majority in parliamentary elections here in June. And secondly, he needs to try and knit together this divided country. And you heard a bit of him there in Katya's package, just saying how this country is filled with fear and divisions, promising that no one is going to be left behind. There's certainly a lot of relief among his supporters here tonight, but nothing like the energy or excitement that there was 5 years ago. And the predominant feeling from many people here tonight was, let's wait and see.
Thank you, Lucy Williamson reporting there. Well, let's get a final thought from our Europe editor, Katya Adler. And Katya, congratulations pouring in for Mr. Macron from world leaders tonight. What significance does this result have on the international stage?
Well, yes, we've had all those messages coming in. We heard from Boris Johnson. He described France as one of the UK's closest and most important allies. But I think the biggest audible sigh of relief has been coming from EU leaders. A President Le Pen would have been seen as an existential threat to the European Union. She's a known Eurosceptic, whereas it's hard to be more EU enthusiastic than Emmanuel Macron. France is the second largest economy in the EU. It's got the biggest military power in the EU. It plays a huge leadership role, not just in Brussels, but also in NATO. And Reeta, that is so important right now, of course, with the raging Russia-Ukraine crisis, whereas Marine Le Pen has traditionally close ties to Moscow. That had European allies and the United States worried. Tonight, they're very relieved.
Katya, thank you very much. Our Europe editor, Katya Adler there. Well, that is all from us in Paris. You can follow coverage throughout the night on the BBC News channel or online at bbc.co.uk/news. But for now, it's back to the studio.
Reeta, many thanks for that. Reeta Chakrabarti there live in Paris. Now, Ukraine's President Zelensky has used his Orthodox Easter Sunday message to deliver a defiant address, saying he's convinced his country would emerge victorious in the war with Russia. He's been meeting the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and the US Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, in the capital, Kyiv, to press for more heavy weapons to be delivered. From there, Mark Lowen reports.
A desecrated country is seeking its protector. Orthodox Easter, this nation's most cherished moment, now less celebration, more a search for solace. Ukrainians and their defenders engaged in what they see as their sacred fight to safeguard their homeland.
With the war in Ukraine, Christ's resurrection symbolizes life over death, victory over the enemy who came to try to conquer us and enslave our people. We see how our neighbor is morally bankrupt and how Ukrainians are united like never before.
Ukraine's church has long fought for autonomy from Russia. The religious battle now hardened by the military one to throw off the shackles of Moscow.
Their faith and their fighting are bringing together Ukrainians, renewing their spirit of national identity, standing together amidst this country's intense trauma. Easter is a moment of rebirth, and for Ukraine this year, it's one of strengthening their pride and independence.
In Russia, too, church and war are intertwined. The president, backed by the patriarch, who's called it a holy battle against an immoral West. From the other side, the iconography seems clear. President Zelensky as Ukraine's savior.
Our souls are full of fierce hatred for the invaders and all that they have done. Our hearts are full of fierce fury. Don't let fury destroy us from within.
For Ukraine's soldiers, their mission and their meal is blessed, a time to reflect before many head off to the front line in the east, traditions savoured among families divided.
Is it sad to be separated from your family at Easter?
Maybe a little bit, yes, but it's our duty to defend our country like every man in our nation.
Slava Ukraini!
The national chant, Glory to Ukraine, a ritual and now a war cry.
Do you and your men feel ready for this fight in the east?
Of course.
This war is for Ukraine's freedom, for European values. It's about whether we return to slavery or stay part of the civilized world. Easter gives us hope as we go to fight.
2 months in, there's unity for the battle ahead, but still no hope for a resurrection of peace. Mark Lowen, BBC News, Kyiv.
A man who lost both his wife and 3-month-old daughter in a missile strike in Odessa in southern Ukraine says he wants the world to know how they died. At least 6 other people were killed when their residential tower block was hit yesterday. From Odessa, here's Caroline Davis.
3-month-old Kira was just learning to laugh. In her short life, most was lived under the cloud of war. But in their flat in Odessa, her family thought they were safe. They were wrong. Yesterday their building was hit by a Russian missile. Kira, her mother Valeria and her grandmother Ludmila were all killed. Her father Yuri only survived because he left to go to the shops. Today, among residents rescuing what they could, we found him.
I came to collect things that were important to my wife. She had a collection of sugar sachets from everywhere. Everything in the flat becomes garbage and will be thrown away. I want to keep them for my memories.
Valeria and Yuri had been together for 9 years. His phone is filled with videos and photographs of them.
She was a great mother, friend, with all the best qualities. It'll be impossible for me to find somebody else like Valeria. She was perfect. Such a person could be given to you only once in a life, and it's a gift from God.
It's been barely 24 hours since the attack, but Yuri says he wants to talk. He hopes that it can make some difference.
My world died, killed by a Russian missile, and unfortunately not only my family is in this situation. It's the grief of Ukraine and of our whole civilization.
One of the few possessions Yuri has recovered from his flat is a pack of nappies. He hands them to us as we leave. Please take them to charity, he says. I have no need for them now. Caroline Davis, BBC News, Odessa.
The Conservative Party chairman, Oliver Dowden, says a change of leader would not be in the national interest after a week in which Boris Johnson has again been criticised in the row over lockdown parties. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the continuing controversy is preventing Parliament discussing issues like the cost of living crisis. Our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus, has the latest.
He's broken the law while in office, been fined for it. And this week, in India, even as Boris Johnson said he wanted to focus on other things, trade deals, Ukraine, he couldn't escape questions about Partygate. Labour's leader wants to talk about an emergency budget to tackle the cost of living crisis, but today was unapologetic about keeping a focus on law-breaking in Downing Street.
I do want to concentrate on the cost of living, but if you or anybody else think that I'm not bothered by standards in public life, that it doesn't matter that the Prime Minister has broken the laws that he made, that it doesn't matter that his authority to lead the country is shot through, that it doesn't matter that his own MPs now, as we saw on Thursday, don't really want to defend him because they're sick of defending the indefensible, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to shy away from that.
How long or how much
But out defending Mr Johnson, his party chairman, parrying away calls from some senior Tories that his fine means he should go.
I think you do need to balance against that. First of all, the really good things that he has done as Prime Minister, whether that's delivering the vaccine programme, getting Brexit done, or the actions in Ukraine. But also the challenges we face right now, whether that's national security or whether that's energy security. These are unparalleled challenges. And I actually think that instability and uncertainty caused by a change of leadership would not be in the national interest.
Other opposition parties, sensing a moment of weakness for the Prime Minister, are not letting up their attacks too.
You've got someone that's lost that moral authority, he's lost the trust. He's laughed at the British people. He was partying, but people were making sacrifices.
And they're determined to see through the inquiry Parliament will now hold to determine whether Mr Johnson lied to it.
There is a point of principle here, which is that if you allow a Prime Minister to mislead Parliament without any repercussions, we end up in a very dangerous place.
So there's no chance Boris Johnson can bid goodbye to his troubles soon. What happened in Downing Street could still lead to more fines. And he knows his own MPs, some already wavering, will be watching closely the results from local elections in less than 2 weeks' time.
And Damien, the other big political story today involving Angela Rayner, I'm still trying to get my head around it.
It's extraordinary, this, Clive. So this is the Mail on Sunday has reported a story about the Labour deputy leader. In it, it contrasts her education, comprehensive school educated, and Boris Johnson, old Etonian, and then quotes unnamed Tory MP saying that Miss Rayner knows when she faces off in the Commons against Mr Johnson that she can't compete with Mr Johnson's Oxford Union debating training. So the claim is that she, from the unnamed Tory MP, that she crosses and uncrosses her legs to distract the Prime Minister. Now, Miss Rayner is furious about this. She has commented today. She said, "I stand accused of a ploy to distract the helpless Prime Minister by being a woman, having legs and wearing clothes." And of the unnamed MP, she said, "They're resorting to spreading desperate, perverted smears in their doomed attempts to save Mr Johnson's skin." He has had to come out to try to damp this all down. On his Twitter account, a statement saying that he respects Miss Rayner's as a parliamentarian, deplores the misogyny directed against her. But there's been really widespread outrage. MPs, cabinet ministers criticising this, and Boris Johnson under pressure to do something about the MP, if unnamed. House of Commons being asked about the Mail on Sunday journalist press pass, and the Mail on Sunday asked to justify their journalism, saying no comment.
OK. Damien, thank you. Damien Grammaticus there. Let's take a look at some of the day's other top stories now. And union leaders say some workers employed on cheaper wages to replace recently sacked P&O crew have been asked to take a further pay cut after their first 4-week contracts expired. The RMT union says workers on a Dover ferry were offered lower wages until one member of staff complained. The Maritime and Coast Guard Agency stepped in to make sure the seafarers were paid their original wages. P&O has been approached for a comment but has yet to respond. A British man detained in Yemen since 2017 who's never been charged or put on trial has been released. Luke Simons, who's 29 and from Cardiff, was seized as a suspected spy by Houthi rebels, a group fighting the Yemeni government in the civil war. And music and dancing has filled the streets of Rio de Janeiro as Carnival returned in full for the first time since 2019 due to the COVID pandemic. There were parades in 2020, but with no crowds. Now, time for all the sports news, and Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes has the details at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi, Lizzie.
Hello, thank you, Clive. Good evening. England are back on top of the Women's Six Nations table after thrashing Ireland 69-0 in Leicester in front of another record crowd. It sets up a winner-takes-all finale in France next weekend, as Joe Curry reports.
A special entrance for a special player. 100 caps up for Emily Scarrett, leading out an England side who knew a bonus point win would see them reclaim top spot in the table. And they made early inroads. The Ireland defence unable to cope as Lark Davis ploughed her way over the line. England touched down once more before the break, as the visitors did well to keep the scoreline under control. After the restart, Marley Packers showed her class to get the second half off to the perfect start, Scarrett adding her first extras of the day. And then England really put their foot to the floor, showcasing the full spectrum of their talents. Whether it be pace from Lydia Thompson, power from Poppy Cleal, or just quick thinking from Ellie Kildunn. England had it all, running in 11 tries without response. This was a rampant performance from the defending champions and one that puts them back in pole position, level on points with France, with the two due to meet in the tournament decider next weekend. Jo Curry, BBC News.
Tyson Fury says there's nothing more he can do as a boxer after his stunning Wembley win over Dillian Whyte last night. The British heavyweight insists he'll now retire unbeaten, but as Nesta McGregor reports, this may not be the end after all.
Tyson Fury, he's great when it comes to hitting opponents. As for high notes, well, there's room for improvement. Also in full voice, Dillian Whyte and the 94,000 fans at Wembley. The fight started cautiously. Fury was always in control. Then, in round 6, Dillian Whyte down and out.
I've fulfilled everything I've ever wanted to fulfil. I'm going to retire as the only second heavyweight in history after Rocky Marciano to retire undefeated.
At just 33 years old, considered prime age for a heavyweight, is this really the end?
He is, without a doubt, hand on heart, walking away from the business. However, the offers and the sacks of gold will start to come in this week, and he might just revisit his retirement plans.
His future may be uncertain, but his legacy is cemented, and he seems content on enjoying the now. Nesta McGregor, BBC News.
Highlights of today's football are on Match of the Day 2 and Sports Scene later, but I'm going to give the key results now. Everton are in the relegation zone with their Premier League future hanging in the balance, beaten 2-0 by Liverpool after survival rivals Burnley won their game. It also means Liverpool are now back up to just a point behind leaders Manchester City. Third-placed Chelsea also won. And Celtic's lead over Rangers in the Scottish Premiership is 6 points again after they beat Ross County. The BBC Sport website has everything else, including the Formula One. But that's it from me. Back to you, Clive.
Lizzie, thank you for that. Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes there. And that's it. Now on BBC One, time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.